I'm the host, Erica from Crypto서울, and welcome back to the Erishow. I'm talking to the top builders and leaders in the crypto space, and today, episode 45. Wow, I keep counting the numbers, and it's just I think surreal to be at episode 45. But today we have Brian, my good friend from Chorus One. Brian, hi, say hi.
Hello,
welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, welcome.
And
welcome.
Congratulations, 45 episodes that's a solid number.
I've been hustling during the COVID times, and I think it's really monumental for me. I never imagined I'll hit 45, really. So yeah, I have lots to learn from you, and we'll talk about that a little later. But I think you understand this whole, I think consistency and this, I guess it really involves a lot of passion. And I think, so want to talk to you about that later as well regarding podcasts. But yeah, I think for people who might not know who you are, can you give us a brief intro of what you do?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so my name is Brian Crain. I've been in the crypto space for quite a long time, like 8.5 years or something. Actually, podcasting is the thing I've done for the longest time. So, and I still do that. So I started a podcast called Epicenter together with Sebastian Couture in December, actually exactly 8 years ago. It was just before Christmas. Yeah, in 2013, we put out our pilot episode.
Wow.
And so we're I don't know, 430 or something like that now. And so I've done that throughout. And then I've also been pretty involved in the Cosmos ecosystem. So I was part of the tendermints team. I was the COO of tendermints in the beginning and worked on, the fundraiser. And then I'm today also part of the Interchain Foundation Council. And then I started a company called Chorus One. That was about 4 years ago. And with Chorus One, we basically run staking infrastructure, validators, across many different networks. And yeah, that's my main occupation these days. I would say I'm definitely, the ideas around what crypto can do in terms of bringing, freedom to people and giving them more control over their own lives and assets and finances and transactions and how they can create things, really resonated with me from, Bitcoin itself to all the things that comes instead. And so, yeah, it's really cool to be able to work on that and then have also such a, this global community, with you doing kind of working on the same sort of things, in Korea and all these people doing it everywhere. So I think that's one thing that's just amazing to be a part of.
Yeah, what a journey. 8 years. Wow. And you wear many hats too. So a lot of the Korean community members, they look up to you and in the Cosmos space especially. And when I said to people that I'm doing an interview with you, they're like, wow, he's the one who kind of brought me into this space, So I was like, wow, you're inspiring a lot. Yeah. So I'd love to hear your story today. And 8 years ago, so that's quite a long time ago. But before then, let's kind of go back a little bit and talk about pre-crypto journey and what kind of attracted you into the first place, and what you did before crypto.
Yeah, I mean, as a teenager, I got pretty interested in economics and in some libertarian ideas. I was reading Ayn Rand and Hayek and Friedman and things like that. And those ideas I found very interesting. And I grew up in Switzerland, and then I went to study economics in the US. And I maybe got away a little bit from economics. I mean, I did some master's degree around game theory as well afterwards, but I was kind of trying to figure out what to do. I wasn't very sure. I was briefly working at a bank, and I was like, that's not it. And then I was traveling around, And then I was like, okay, I should, like, entrepreneurship attracted me. So the idea of like starting companies, I felt like that would be a great thing. So I made some attempts at that, didn't really like get anywhere. It was also something where I liked it sort of in the abstract, but in the concrete, everything seemed kind of boring. You know, I was like, okay, you could build maybe a company there, but like that doesn't seem that interesting. And then in 2013, I, found out about Bitcoin, and that was pretty, it just had an enormous appeal to me. I think for a bunch of different reasons. So one was it had a lot of intersection with questions of economics and game theory as well, and with some of these libertarian ideas around freedom. And then there was also, of course, the sort of entrepreneurial thing of like, creating an entirely new world and system. So I was pretty much immediately like, yeah, this is it. I should like focus fully on that. And then I was finishing a master's degree at the time, and then basically started working in crypto. I mean, working in crypto, I didn't like have a job. I started a meetup group. So I started like the Bitcoin meetup in Berlin, and then I started a podcast soon afterwards. And was basically we made some other attempts. We tried to start maybe some small like co-working space in Berlin, but like we didn't really have any money, and it was like 20 square meter room, didn't really work out. And helped a little bit with Ethereum in like 2014. And then found, I mean, at the time, it seemed like getting mainstream adoption of crypto would be like really, really hard and far off, because first of all, the user experience was pretty bad. The scalability wasn't there at all. And so it seemed like, okay, this Ethereum thing, nice idea, but like, I mean, is that really going to work like that? And there was no venture capital funding as well, or very little. So I then felt, okay, maybe it's going to be in the enterprise space where you're going to have blockchain adopted first, right? Where like companies say, okay, we're going to use this, and then it's going to later be used by like everybody. Right. And so that seemed like a reasonable thesis to me. And so I joined this company called Airs Industries in 2015. It later rebranded to Monax. And that company, so Ethan Buckman, who's like now the CTO of, who was the CTO of Tendermint later. Yeah. He was an engineer there, and that company was basically the first company to build on Tendermint, because they were like, oh, we want to have these like private blockchain or consortium blockchains, but like we can't have proof of work, doesn't make sense, so we have to have something else. And then they found basically Tendermint and started building on Tendermint. And so I was like working there for a while. We spent a lot of time I was doing business development, right? So we go to these conferences, speak with these banks, insurance companies, and a lot of consulting companies. Sure. And that didn't, I don't know, at some point I felt like I realized I was wrong, right? That adoption would come there first. Because I think I think there was two main factors. Like one was you started to have basically tokens as a monetization model. And so with tokens as a monetization model, you can basically, I mean, if you look at all these crypto projects, I mean, how much actual usage is there, right? Like how many real like user and transaction, it's actually still like very small. Yeah. I mean, if you say like, okay, let's say you take a traditional startup that has, maybe raised $200 million. I mean, probably they have like a lot of revenues and like millions of users, and like it's probably like a lot of actual adoption.
Yeah.
But in crypto, you have plenty of projects that have raised like that much, and they have like some usage maybe, but it's definitely not like that.
Right.
But because basically of the tokens, you can kind of buy the future now and fund it today. I think that really changed. That just put so much money into the space that in a way you're able to, to get this adoption. And then, and then the other thing with the enterprise blockchain thing was just that, I mean, there you generally had a bunch of different parties that had to come to some agreement about, we're going to have this chain and it's going to function like that and it's going to do this. And, each of those would generally be like large companies, and they were kind of slow and cumbersome, and then they all had to coordinate together on something. And that was just basically impossible. And I think that I mean, I haven't followed this area for a long time closely, but it still seems like there's not been very much adoption there. But then basically I was working there, and we were building on, tendermint, and I gave a talk. I remember at this Bitcoin meetup in Berlin, when I started about tendermint as well. And I think Jay was like, we like live streamed it, and Jay was like watching it in the middle of the night or something, and it was like, oh cool, somebody's giving a talk about tendermint. Like he was like very excited. So and then when I left that, I mean Ethan had left a bit earlier and had joined Jay, and then later I also left and started working on Cosmos.
Oh, good times. I mean, I think I began to know about the team in 2017. So that was pretty early as well. And then I probably met you then as well, or 18 or something. But anyway, good times. Interoperability is definitely a big asset of the Cosmos ecosystem. And I think Chorus One also resonates with that as well. But why do you find it important, and why did you find the Cosmos ecosystem attractive and still attractive to this multi-chain, I guess, ecosystem that currently exists today?
I think the Cosmos vision, I think, was very attractive for a few reasons. One, I think this idea of like modularity is like very powerful, that you basically have like different parts. You have like tendermint, and you can use it with different things, and you have like the Cosmos SDK, and then you can put in your own modules, and then like IBC, and like you can use each of those like on their own, and you can use them together and in different ways. And I think that's very different from like almost all the other blockchains where it's it's like one big thing. And so I think that's attractive in terms of, I think it's just it's more flexible. And then I think the idea of like sovereign blockchains is very important and makes a lot of sense. So basically people can go and build their own blockchain, and then those blockchains can basically interoperate via IBC. I think that's just very, very powerful, because again, it gives so much flexibility. It gives a lot of resilience, right? Because maybe one chain has a problem, but it's one chain has a problem. There's like 100 other chains. I think it's more decentralized as well. And so I think all of those things together were, just very compelling. I mean, also tendermint as a proof of stake system or as a consensus thing. I mean, it was at least like simple and made sense and like solid, and I think it works well. There wasn't really, much alternative there. So I think those are the main things. It's also a great community. Like, the people are nice, but maybe that came kind of.
Well, it's a big factor, though. I do also agree that the community members are very very tightly knit, and even despite, I mean, this whole like, long trajectory, still I think the coming members have become stronger and stronger. So I'm very impressed by how it's become, and even especially for the Crain community as well. So yeah, it's definitely a big reason to stay connected in the ecosystem. It did come a little later, but yeah, in the beginning, it was very, very tight. So yeah, thanks for explaining that. And I mean, we'll talk about the ICF a little later, but let's talk more about Chorus One. So it's a big, well, it's not, I guess, like, I was very curious, like, why did you decide to found Chorus One, and how did the team come together? And just like in business terms, like, what made you decide to get into this whole different ecosystem? Just curious about that reasoning as well.
Yeah. So I mean, I was working at Tendermint in 2017. I think when I joined, we were maybe 4 people or something like that, 4 or 5 people. And then, it grew to around like 40 people maybe by the end of the year. At the same time, it was like it was a difficult place to work at, because there was a lot of, it was not a good work environment, right? I mean, in the end, of course, it did splinter apart in like many different directions. I think almost all those people still work in the kind of larger Cosmos ecosystem.
Yep.
But, across like many different companies today.
Yep.
But yeah, it was just, I mean, a lot of my work had been maybe around the fundraiser, and then in Berlin, we set up this like full node, and, it was like a bit around this growth. And then it didn't feel like it was like a great place for me to like contribute and work in. Mm-hmm. And it was very clear that proof of stake would be, the future of how blockchains would be secured. I mean, this was clear a long time ago. I think this is clear. I mean, I think it was clear in 2014 or something like that already. I mean, if you think of the Ethereum white paper, or even earlier, right? The Ethereum white paper was already there, right? That, okay, we're going to switch to proof of stake.
Yeah.
And they were like, I guess, what was it? Like in a year or 6 months or something like that, right? In 2014, and they still haven't done it. But it was, it was clear, I think, that proof of stake would be the main way of how blockchains would be secured, that there would be lots of different blockchains. And at the time, Cosmos hadn't launched yet. So even though we kind of knew there would be proof of stake that would be securing many blockchains, and there's this role of a validator in these protocols, but that didn't exist. There were no validators around. And so one was the question of like, okay, who's going to do this? Mm-hmm. Like, who's actually going to be there and like run these nodes when the network launches and stuff? And then what's it going to look like? What are the implications? How do you do it? And so I think I wanted to keep working on proof of stake, on Cosmos. I was interested in this thing of like validator, and I thought it would be an interesting opportunity, an interesting problem to work on. So then basically I joined with my co-founder Meher Roy. Mm-hmm. So he was also one of our co-hosts at Epicenter. So we had been doing the podcast together for a few years, and talk a lot, and then it was in DEF CON in Cancun, so it was an Ethereum conference in Cancun. Afterwards, it was kind of a Cosmos retreat, and then he was there as well, and then we decided to start the company.
Oh, yeah. I mean, validators are definitely they play a pivotal role in POS systems. So I guess you wanted to be involved, but in a, I guess, slightly indirect way to the cause. I mean, play a role in the ecosystem, but not directly in the team. So I guess, like, I think that really fits the role there. I mean, because of course, I haven't run a validator myself, so I'm very curious about how it works. And how your daily life is like as when you're running the system. So, I mean, can you kind of break it down to small elements and kind of go through what goes on and what you have to do and what do you have to make sure that it runs smoothly and stuff like that? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. I mean, you're basically, the thing is, right, you're running this software that tends to be pretty like immature and experimental. And you have to run it, 24/7 with like little downtime, and, it has to be very secure. So I think all of those things come together. So what does that mean? Well, I mean, we had a big, philosophy, or we don't use the cloud, right? So we run everything on, like bare metal servers. So I think that's also one thing that's, it's very different from, I guess, how most things are run these days, right? Because most things, like most people, even if they work in DevOps, they use like AWS and things like that. And so that's been an interesting thing, actually, that the kind of skill set we need there is like become pretty rare. But then, basically people have to, we have people who then like, run this software on our infrastructure. There's a lot of work around monitoring and alerts and like being able, to be sure about, okay, when there's an issue that we're able to like respond quickly. So, there's people have on call and, they're like, leave the house, their, laptop in the backpack, at all times and stuff like that. So I think that, there's a lot around it's definitely a very infrastructure heavy, activity in business. And of course the complexity grows a lot, right? Because when you have like a lot of different networks and then they have upgrades, sometimes upgrades are like in the middle of the night or like at random times or like emergency upgrade, and then somebody has to deal with it.
Yeah.
And then of course, if you have so many different networks, also context sharing is like a challenge. So like maybe someone knows like one network well, but then like how, so I think that's a big focus for us also. It's like, okay, how do you scale that? And how do you do that well with like a lot of network, with a bigger team? So I think, so there's that. And then of course there's the, the other side of kind of the customers, right? And the customers can be that they just stake directly with you through some wallet, right? There's a lot of cases are like that. And then, I think there's different things you can do to like attract those customers. I think brand is very important, so that people see you as, secure and trustworthy and reliable, and also contributors to the ecosystem. So, we do quite a lot of content, research, podcasts, participate in governance. We do also quite a lot of protocol development and, very involved in different ecosystems. And then there's also the kind of aspects of working with different types of institutions. So, whether that's like, running nodes on behalf of others, like an example is Zero Knowledge Validator, right? Where we are running their, some of their validators, like on Cosmos and Osmosis. And so, there's some things like that, or, actually I think that's growing a lot also in terms of the complexity and the type of customers and the types of requirements. And, but I think that's going to become a big thing, right? Because in the end, you're going to have, I think a lot of the economic activity, in the world is going to be conducted via proof of stake blockchains. And then that means a lot of people need to be able to like participate in those and be a part of it. And they, of course, will also hold those coins and tokens like all over the place in different instruments, and whether it's in their own wallet, via Ledger, or like different mobile wallets, or on exchanges, or with custodians, or maybe via some sort of product that's created by a bank or a traditional financial institution. So you have as proof of stake in crypto gets more adopted, also staking becomes much more complex. And I think we are in that phase now.
Wow. It seems like you're doing a variety of things at the same time, some customer service related as well, some BD, right? It seems like the number of networks that you're connected to are like increasing like a lot. I see the website, it's like a list, so many partnering projects. And that seems like a lot of business related work as well. And then infrastructure, of course, that's like core. So many different things at the same time. Maybe it's an elementary question, but just curious, like if you compare like delegating your tokens to a validator, for example, how does I've seen many Korean teams, for example, trying to make their own validator, like trying to create their own validator team, and just how does that cost, not like financially, but just like, is it really costly to set up an actual validator in comparison to just delegating your tokens to, like, what would be the reasonable choice? I mean, just
right.
Yeah,
I mean, delegating the tokens, right? You just pay some commission, right? And so, for example, with like Chorus on like something like Cosmos, it's like 8%, right? So, that's now if you run your own validator, I mean, it's of course become easier because there's more. I mean, it's become easier on one network, right? Because there's more tools, more maybe more experience, more things you can rely on than like it was at the beginning. But still, I mean, you have to then. It's a lot of. I mean, if you're just staking your own money, for example, right? I mean, you still need to ensure uptime, and you need to do upgrades, and
right.
So it's you don't want to do this alone. Certainly, I think you probably need to have like a team. Now, maybe one validator, you can have like a small team of like 3 people, and they can probably like do it reasonably well. But of course, even if you take into account like the value of their time and attention and energy that's going to go into that, I would say, I guess depends a bit on the, but it's probably in the hundreds of thousands, I would say, per year, like the operating cost, like.
Wow.
Well, I mean, if you think of like, how much does a competent like engineer make? Well, it's quite a bit, right? And now probably now of course you have some other factors, right? So now like you do it for one Cosmos network. Well, the second Cosmos network is going to be like much easier and cheaper, right? Because it's basically mostly the same thing. So you do have these economies of scale, right? Where like you go to more networks, it doesn't necessarily mean it becomes like that much harder.
Yeah.
Although of course then you have different consensus, different, like a larger diversity of networks, and then that has its own challenges, because then again you have to figure out how to manage all of these different things. And then of course the big question is like, if you say, okay, I want to run my own validator, if you're just staking your own funds, almost certainly doesn't make sense, and you're better off like delegating.
Yeah.
Maybe if you have like a huge amount but even then, like you want to run like a team that's then their energies on that, probably doesn't make sense. But of course, the other thing is, if you run a validator, you can also get delegations. And then a big question is, how do you get delegations, right? Like, where do they come from, and like why? And, maybe for some people, right, they have like a strong advantage in some sort of, context. Like, for example, I was speaking with somebody recently, and he has a big media, like crypto media thing, and I once started a validated company. Like, okay, that makes sense, right? Because then he can basically promote the validation services to that audience, and you should be able to get a good amount of delegations. But I think if you just come from kind of scratch now without some kind of unique competitive advantage, it's not easy probably to get delegations and to get the traction.
Oh, interesting. Oh, it seems like Chorus One, for example, there's a lot of diverse things at the same time, a lot of maintenance, but also you mentioned about ecosystem building, so kind of like doing research and sharing content, right? So do you think that the role of a validator can be evolved or expanded to a bigger role or to a different like niche? I'm trying to just kind of curious about how it can evolve, or how influential it can be more than being a validator. I mean, can it do that, or do you think it's limited, or just
Yeah. I mean, I think so. There's a lot of different things, right? So there's, of course, first of all, a core responsibility of validators, at least in the Cosmos networks and in a bunch of the other networks, not in all the networks, is that you also have governance, right? So you basically have to vote on governance and participate in that, and you have a big responsibility in that way.
Yeah.
So I think that's important, and of course, to be able to vote well in governance, and it's also, it can be a good thing to be involved in some kind of open source development, or contributing to the network in some ways. I think that's definitely one thing that's and then I think anything you can do, there are lots of different possibilities. I do think the topic of MEV is also interesting.
Yeah.
And that is something that potentially will really change the role of validators. Because if kind of your job changes from you just have this standard software that assembles the block, to now the validator has some role in deciding on the order of those things, that makes it much more complicated. Now, I think it's still early to see kind of exactly how that plays out. And maybe if you have some software like flashbots or other protocol things, they will kind of remove the need for validators to some extent to engage with this. But I do think in general, the complexity of running a validator is going to increase a lot. And so this is also one area that we are investing in, is having better data on what's going on in the chain and having a better understanding. And I think that's going to be very useful and valuable in so many dimensions, from producing research about what's going on in chains, to helping others understand issues with network or adoption or performance, to understanding to optimizing validation performance as well. So yeah.
Oh, very deep stuff that you're working on. Speaking of what you guys are working on right now, can you share some recent developments that might be exciting to the community, on behalf of Chorus One? Is there anything that you can share with us that's been going on?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I would say a big focus is definitely on just basically being able to support more networks and do it better, and do it more reliably. And so that's a big focus for us. Yeah, we do have, maybe I can tease this. We do have some NFT coming delegators.
Oh, wow. I mean, oh, that's interesting. See, so I mean, I'm sure you cannot really tell us too much, but like, how would that work though? Like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm supposed to announce there, but like, I mean, I can. I don't see why not. Yeah, I mean, I think initially we're doing it on Solana, where basically like we just created some NFT and give it to like Solana delegators, and then we have some ideas for taking this further in different ways, different chains and different things to do with it. But it's kind of like early and like we're exploring it. Yeah, I do think the idea of having more of a course community and having a like closer relationship, like being able to support delegators better is like, yeah, it's something we want to explore and develop as well.
Yeah, NFTs are a good way to, it's a creative way to give like support and appreciation in many ways. So yeah, I see why not. I mean, yeah, I think NFT drops are a clever way to kind of, when I'm hosting events too, like when you want to, especially for Epicenter as well, maybe that could work out too, like for your fans, and like you can do a drop.
We've had Sunny brought that idea up, like, I don't know, 2 years ago or something. And we've have discussed it. It's just something where on the Epicenter side, like we are pretty, basically we have a bunch of different hosts, right? And all of us have like other things that are kind of our main occupation. So we haven't had the resources and kind of energy to like execute on it. But yeah, like the idea of like doing some Epicenter NFT has definitely been around for a long time. Speaking of Epicenter, I'm a huge fan. I mean, I'm sure you know by now, but I've been a longtime fan of Epicenter, and I've been talking to a lot of the co-hosts as well, not only you but also Sunny and Sebastian. So it's been amazing to see it grow, and like what a long history as well. How did the team come together? Because like I think Sunny, he's joined a little later, right? Or is he? Maybe I don't know the order, but no. So in the beginning, it was basically Sebastian and I who started it, and I think we were the only ones for maybe a year and a half or something like that. And then Meher joined. So I had heard Meher basically as a guest on another podcast. He was working in the pharmaceutical industry at the time, but he was interested in crypto, and he was writing about crypto and wrote some white paper, and I heard him as a guest. And I reached out to him and asked him if he wanted to become like a co-host, and so he became a co-host. And then Sunny joined some later stage. I mean, I met Sunny, when I was at Tendermint. He was, I think he was still at Berkeley at the time. He was like 19 or something like that. And he came during his, we had a kind of Cosmos retreat in Canada in mid 2017. And he kind of briefly came by from his college break, and then I think was convinced to drop out. And then at some point later he joined as a co-host as well. So I think that was probably start 2018, I would guess, or maybe it was 2017 or 18. And then we had also Friederike Ernst, who's the COO and co-founder of Gnosis.
Right.
And I've also known Gnosis, like Martin, Stefan for a long time, and Friederike a bit. And so then she joined in maybe briefly after Sunny, I think, probably it's maybe 2018, I guess, but I'm not sure.
Very interesting. It's a dream team, to be honest. I think the different styles and the different type of questions, it's been really interesting to see that conversation unfold. And because I'm doing it alone, so I'm just kind of it's very like interesting to me, like how that interaction works. Yeah, I think that's really cool. I mean, you've had so many guests, right? So I'm sure like there's like you mentioned 400, right? Was it how many episodes? Like
something like that, 430, I think.
See, I mean, it's hard to count, but like, can you share some of your, I guess, top interviewees, like who you found, like which conversations you found like really interesting or surprising, maybe in a good way? Yeah, I want to hear that story.
I mean, one that I think had like, I found very inspiring, and I re-listened to the episode maybe like twice, which I think is probably like a record for me. So we had CZ on in 2018. I think Binance was less than a year old, but of course already like the largest crypto exchange. And that was like a fantastic interview, and I was very, I had also just started Chorus One at the time, and so to hear kind of like how he grew this company, Binance, from like nowhere to be the largest crypto exchange in like less than a year. It's such a crazy, insane entrepreneurial journey. And I think that it was a really great interview and like very interesting, and also very cool to hear how he really tried to have this decentralized decision making in Binance, where like people autonomously can like decide and execute a move, and I think that was of course a huge aspect to their ability to like grow so quickly and move so fast. And so like that was a great great episode. I remember. I mean, I'm gonna like another one. So I'll also mention, I think we just did an episode, so this is not out yet, but I guess it will come out like this week or next week. Next week, I guess. But we did an episode with like Amir Taki. Actually, it ended up being very long, like 3 hours. So we're putting it out in 2 episodes. But I think that was also very cool. Like I really enjoyed like his maybe some people have heard about him. He's been also in Bitcoin since, I don't know, 2011 or 10 or some crazy time, and he was involved in Ethereum in the beginning, and he's this like very also radical political person. He went to like Syria to fight against ISIS and stuff like that.
Wow.
But yeah, so we talk about like privacy, and they're working on like privacy focused like DeFi, and I really enjoyed that. I think especially because it's so explicit about the political and revolutionary nature of crypto. Like when you see most blockchain websites today, they talk about like, faster blocks, cheaper, and, more scalability and, better UX, something like that. But in the end, I do think this is all like, there is a political aspect to all of this, right? Where it's really about decentralizing power. And I enjoyed it because we went a lot into that. So that, I also remember we had Juan Benet on of IPFS, like that was like episode 100. We had him on some other times as well, but especially that episode, I think it was number 100. I remember well, and that was like an amazing episode as well. And I'll mention one last one.
Okay.
Because I just listened to it again, like a few days ago. But we did one with Galen of Urbit. I don't know if you're familiar with Urbit, but like,
Urbit, of course.
Yeah. So I've just become like very interested. I mean, I've been interested in Urbit for a while, but it's kind of recently rekindled, and so I was re-listening to our episode with him. Meher and I had him on in 2017, and that was also, I think, it was a nice episode.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for sharing.
And still feels like, I was listening to it, and I mean, I guess that's maybe a credit to Urbit and like how large and long developed their vision's been, because it feels like, we could have done this episode basically now and it would be like just as, it's not outdated at all.
Right. I love it how like sometimes it's been so long and you have earlier guests in 2017 or something, and then you invite them back, for a third or second or third episode, and it's really interesting to compare those two and then see how they've grown or how they develop their ideas. So
yeah,
that was really cool too.
Yeah. I mean, we just did one with Emin Günser.
Oh.
And about Avalanche, and this is the fourth time. We had him actually on 3 times before, but like a long time ago. I was kind of shocked when I was preparing for it that there was like a 5-year gap between the last episode we had with him and now this one we did.
Wow.
Because we had him, when he was a professor in Cornell. And he was writing these papers, and we had a bunch of episodes there about some of the papers he written. So that was also pretty cool to see. Basically what he done since then is pretty amazing. Yeah,
it's been on a rocket ship since, especially recently, right? It's been going.
And actually that was very cool. At your conference in Biddle, I was. We had a dinner, and then I was on the same table with Anatoly. And
I remember that one.
Solana and
I was there
too. Yeah.
That was
and
so fun.
I was constantly trying to get them to debate on who has the better blockchain design. And it was very entertaining.
That was fun. I remember I was at that table and it was kind of getting heated, but then I think they were trying to keep it cool.
Yeah, they were trying to be polite and all. Yeah.
And then the CEO of Clayton was there too, from Cacao, and he was there sitting in there. He was like, "What's going on?" So it was very interesting. Okay, well, that was fun times. Thanks for sharing that. As you know, I have a very big interest in podcasts and how you've grown it. So I really want to, I'm very inspired by it. So I wanted to hear that story as well. And regarding ICF, coming back to ICF a long way back, and you're heavily involved in ICF and Interchain Foundation. And what would be your top priorities for the ICF Foundation Council in 2022? Is there any grand plan or anything that you have in mind?
So I saw that question that Zach would on Twitter.
Jack.
I mean, Jack. I will say this. So we have had some discussions, done some work on this, but there's actually, we haven't sort of signed off on okay, so this is mostly my own take a little bit. I think scaling is a huge thing, right? Also for the ICF. The ICF, when I joined and Fernando joined, so another ICF member, this was in a year and a half ago. And back then it was Jay and Ethan and there's some Swiss lawyer, and they were basically in some kind of stalemate where they didn't get along and nothing happened. It was very hard to, and so then Fernando and I joined. At some point Jay left, and later Tess joined as well. And so I think a lot of it has been around, okay, how do we actually function well as a foundation council? How are we able to work well with the Interchain? There's Interchain GmbH, which is in basically a subsidiary in Germany. And so there's been a lot around the scaling of that. And, they have like kind of core teams working on IBC, working on Tendermint, working on, building a team on Cosmos SDK. There's like, some work happening there on that. So basically covering a lot of different things. And I think the growth of that is a big, that's definitely a big focus, so that, because I think all of these teams have been like, understaffed. And then also Ethan's company, Informal, right, is also very involved in a lot of those. And so I think still there's a lot of work and improvements to be done in terms of like, Interchain as an organization. Today I think it's around like 30-ish people. And then I think this will probably grow to maybe 60 or something in a year. So I think there's a lot, Now, the other thing, of course, is there's a lot of funding that ICF gives out, to a lot of different projects in the ecosystem, to work on like all the different technologies. I think maybe somewhat off, but I think it's probably like, 50 plus organizations per year that receive like some kind of funding. That definitely goes to, the core technologies like Tendermint, IBC, and Cosmos SDK, but it also goes to like a lot of other stuff, including some of the more, there's some features around this interchain staking, or like, some kind of Cosmos Hub features they're working on.
Yeah.
I would say one thing that I feel like there's a lot of potential if we can improve it is around governance. And I mean like the on-chain governance, like we have, let's say on the Cosmos Hub, there's like a community pool. There are some proposals going in, there's some fundings being distributed. And I think if you compare it with other blockchains and other blockchain governance, I would say Cosmos governance is like pretty good. It's like among the best. At the same time, I still feel it's like, it could be like, better. I mean, in the end, I think it needs to get like 100 times better or something like that to be able to, and so I am definitely interested in maybe the ICF also trying to support more efforts around governance, around the community pool, like trying to make it function better, more effectively, be able to have maybe higher rate of decision making. I think in the long run, that's going to be like very crucial, because in the long run, these chains have the ability, right, to like print their own money. And if they have also the ability to then use that money like very effectively and use those tokens very effectively to like grow the ecosystem, I think that's going to be, just like amazing and super powerful. I think right now it doesn't quite work like that, but that feels like an area where I would love to see a lot of like investment and activity going in the next, 2, 3, 5 years.
Governance is the future. It needs to be improved for, I think, every team, and it's really a tricky area, but it does need to be tackled, kind of solved as well. So I think that's a very good point. I mean, I was once funded by the Interchain Foundation, so very grateful, and had a great experience as well. And last but not least, I would love to hear your vision for Chorus One in 2022, or for onwards, like for the next 5 years or so. If you have any personal vision as well, that's also welcome. So any grand words for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think the core thing is sort of like, okay, why? Why all of this? And I think for me and for us, I think what is really central is the idea of like increasing freedom and giving people more capabilities to like manage their own assets, participate in network, stake, like participate in governance. And so, yeah, I want us to like enable that, right? And sort of enable this new, decentralized, and more open system like that, we can run like society on. And I think that's like a transformation, that's a transition that is probably like decades long. And I think we can do a lot to like help support that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for your insight. And, I've been always a big fan of your work, Chorus One, also Epicenter and, Interchain Foundation. So looking forward to 2022. Hopefully we can plan something offline in 2022. I hope you come to Seoul as well.
Yeah, I mean, your conference is still like definitely one of my favorite conferences. So I hope you bring Biddle back at some point.
I wish. Hoping for November 2022. Crossing my fingers, and hopefully the government lets you guys in. I'm just kidding. But yeah, thank you so much for the time, and looking forward to seeing you soon. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much, Erica.
Thanks, Brian.
Happy New Year to you. And
Happy New Year.